when you know that someone is terminally ill, we spend time with them, we start accepting or going through the stages from before the person dies. And we start saying, okay, how am I going to deal with this? I already missed the person. As opposed to somebody who dies suddenly in a motor vehicle accident, for example, we see the person leaving, but then we hear that they've died. And so there's that discrepancy of, is the person really gone? This can't be the case, kind of thing. So it kind of catches persons off guard, especially when they haven't seen the person in a lot of stages. What I usually tell persons is go with how you're feeling, because your body processes grief differently. And even if you'll have multiple deaths, you'll find that you yourself respond differently in different situations. So I tell persons, don't allow other people to tell you how to grieve. You grieve the way that you feel that you need to. And that's usually very, very helpful for persons, because they realize that, I don't have to listen to this person, that person, how I should.
Yes.
If they want to separate, then that's fine. If they don't want to, that's equally fine. Especially that the death of a loved one brings a different kind of pain. We lose relationships, we lose jobs, we lose different things. But losing someone cuts to the core of who we are, and it does trigger certain things for some persons. But it's finding out the individual. How are they processing the situation and working with them?
In Office with Dr. Jevon Samuels.
Welcome to another episode of In Office. I am Dr. Jevon Samuels. In office with me today is a special guest. He is a neuroclinical psychologist. His name is Dr. Marlon Simpson. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
Alright, so today we'll be discussing grief and loss. Alright, so this is going to go through the stages of grief and loss and death of loved one in general, right? But today also was an episode that I'm dedicating to one of my previous guests on this show. Her name is Latoya Williams. She recently passed away, and I want to say condolences to her family and friends. And to me, she was a patient that actually had became a friend who I've seen over the years. And I want to make special mention of her in this episode because she was actually one of those patients when I was initially wanting to start this channel. And I was asking some random persons if they would like to come on my channel. And probably 9 out of 10 patients would say no. And she was one of those patients that had motivated and say, yes, you can do it. And don't worry about it, just put God in the midst. So actually, she'll always be a part of my life in terms of her memories, especially in regards to this channel and seeing other patients. So at this time, I just want to set my alarm for 1 minute and give her a minute of silence. Okay, so RIP, Miss Latoya Williams, no? 90% of persons who have lupus are females.
I was dating and in a relationship, but for the last 5 years when I've developed further complications where the kidneys are involved.
What are some of the coping mechanisms that they use? Does it need to have I'm certain that apart from the financial stress that it brings, it must bring some emotional and psychological issues?
Well, for me, I use faith and family to help to deal with my situation, and also lifestyle changes.
Dr. Simpson. You're a specialist in the field, so it's my pleasure to have you on this channel to give expert opinion about a very touchy topic in which we'll all go through, because I'm getting sure that everyone has actually lost a loved one. It's actually a common, the natural part of life, alright?
Right.
So now I want to specifically talk about death of loved one and grief, and just want to give you the floor to open. What exactly is grief and loss, and why is it so difficult to cope with it, essentially?
Alright, so there are many different types of grief, but for purposes of this episode, we want to look at death of a loved one.
Okay.
So it comes in different stages, and so persons learn how to understand, navigate that space of grief or what it means for them. So it's how you deal with losing someone that's close to you, or even someone that you've known for years.
Okay, all right. Normally, I work at the hospital and we'll see patient, at least one patient die every week. I work at the medicine ward, and there's a wide range in how relatives will react to the death of the loved one. Some actually will faint. We have to admit relatives, while some will just take it as if nothing much had happened. What do you think would have caused this variation in terms of the grief process, in terms of the initial news?
Well, some persons don't know how to handle it. So for some persons it's an overwhelming feeling. So for some persons it hasn't registered for them as yet. So you may find that they have a delayed response to the whole event.
Okay.
Alright.
Alright. And so overall in general, what are the different stages of grief that persons normally go through? Because I want to really get into even my situation and others, but just want to give an overview of what are stages of grief and who everyone normally goes through these 5 stages over a period of time.
Yes, most people go through all 5 stages of grief. So we have denial, we have acceptance, we have depression, we have bargaining.
Okay.
And so persons go through, and again, that's not the standard order of things.
Okay.
But persons experience different ones at different times. You know.
Okay.
So usually disbelief or not believing the loved one is really gone.
Okay.
Probably gone somewhere else.
Alright, sometimes the initial denial stage varies depending on if someone like dies suddenly from a motor vehicle accident or someone was diagnosed with a terminal illness, right? Because even in my case, when I lost my brother, he was actually diagnosed with a terminal illness. So in my mind, in a sense, the initial process that had taken place there in which he died, it was shocking, but because it was expected, it's like we probably start to grieve him before he died.
Right.
How does that not? Why does that normally take place? Like you're grieving someone even before they die.
Right. So when you know that someone is terminally ill, we spend time with them, we start accepting or going through the stages from before the person dies. And we start saying, okay, how am I going to deal with this? I already missed the person. As opposed to somebody who dies suddenly in a motor vehicle accident, for example, you see the person leaving, but then we hear that they've died. And so there's that discrepancy of, is the person really gone? This can't be the case, kind of thing.
Okay.
So it kind of catches persons off guard, especially when they haven't seen the person in latter stages.
Okay. Alright. So in terms of the stages now, do you want to go into a little more detail with each stages so we can take the conversation from there? The stages.
Alright,
What
so
exactly are the internal despair then?
alright, so denial, obviously, as it means that the person just doesn't accept that the person is gone. And again, you usually see that in situations where the person dies suddenly,
Yes.
without warning. So that usually is the longest one. So persons spend all the time in denial, not sure how to deal with it. How can this be? I haven't accepted that as yet. Then we have we have acceptance. Let's go to acceptance. Acceptance, of course, is saying, all right, I know that this has happened. I've accepted that this is what is happening and all that. Now, when it comes on to bargaining,
Yes.
that's where persons find one of the difficulties, because bargaining now says, well, Lord, take me instead, bring back my loved one, why did this have to happen? So there's a lot of back and forth between the person I'm gone or other persons as well.
Okay.
We also have the the stage of anger where you're angry sometimes at the person, but in case the person died suddenly or of causes that could have been prevented.
Okay.
That sense of, you should have, could have, would have
Okay.
done things differently. Then there's the depression stage as well, which is where the person's just saying, well, I really can't believe that, this has happened and causes loss of appetite and a number of other areas.
Alright. Now, in terms of with my family, like for example, like sometimes person dies and it's like everyone in the family's favorite, right? So in that case now, it becomes a situation where everyone is wondering like why the Lord have to take, for example, the person that actually showing up for everyone in the family and cases like that. What would be some of the counseling techniques or tips that they give those persons in which they think that, oh, you have so much that they from the family, probably was the wrong person?
Well, I'll explore in therapy the relationship that the person is saying that hasn't everybody is in the family. What brought up things like that. I would want the person to even talk about the person was dying because there's something that you did to the person that may have caused some upset. So it's a lot of areas to explore in terms of why that particular statement was made. But in other cases, I ask the family member, even if the funeral has passed, for that individual to write a eulogy about the person. Share your thoughts, feelings, as if you're writing to the person. Another technique is, what if that person were here one more time? What would you want to say to them?
Okay. Alright, so for example, what's the time frame like the whole grief process normally lasts? Because for example, I can just look back at my parents. Probably my brother passed over 10 years now and I don't think they have fully recovered as yet. So it's that case that they don't think sometimes some persons never recover until they die.
Some persons don't recover. A lot of persons don't necessarily get over the death of a loved one, especially if they're close or we're close to them. So what you'll find is that persons will ruminate on it. This is constant reflection. But typically, about a year and a half, persons begin to feel a little bit better.
Okay.
Except for special occasions throughout the year.
Okay.
But after that, it can become chronic grief.
Chronic grief. Okay.
It's a whole other area.
Oh, it's a whole other area. So you don't want to mention about the chronic grief?
Yeah.
Let's give us a minute or two about chronic grief.
All right. So chronic grief, or some persons call it delayed grief,
Yes.
is where the person just doesn't get over the initial shock. They're still within the 5 stages, just circling around, going back and forth for the different stages. And you'll find that anger is one of the dominant emotions that's expressed there. So persons really have a difficulty in that moment.
Oh, alright. Now, in terms of, in my case now, I have like, let's say before, I'm a doctor and work in like a field with a lot of patients there, right? And after a while, it become just condition of like that, oh, a patient just pass and don't necessarily have to feel sad or anything about it. But sometimes we develop this bond, especially like sometimes a private patient that they are seeing on a regular basis and they call with the phone, etc. In this case, like in my case now with Miss Williamson. And it's like, they just touched me, like, because, for example, I know that she was have chronic illnesses, but for example, I would probably spoke to her like about 2 weeks ago and she would say that she would be fine and everything, and then the day just passed. And then I'm like wondering myself that, oh, she would normally call if something is wrong with her, and I would say, oh, go to the hospital or come by my office. And then she just passed like that, and I'm saying that I'm actually just feeling really sad, and I said that it's just my patient.
Right.
So, what would be some of the stuff that in terms of, say, like a doctor relationship to a patient, in which she like comes such a good patient, and because it was not just because she's paid and it's money, actually develop a stronger bond. As I said before, I mentioned in the area, she was actually one of those persons that motivated me to do this channel. And I know that she was sick for probably about 20 years with like lupus, kidney problems. So she was really putting on a fight for a long time. And she had told me a lot of her stories, alright? So it's like I'm really connecting to her like a relative, more than just a doctor-patient relationship.
Right.
So I just want to know what are some of the tips you think I could just do to help me just to not so attach to patients in general, especially private patients.
One of the things that I always tell persons is that we in the medical field, we have a sense of wanting to always separate ourselves from our patients. But for example, we have to think of our human beings as well. And we all have emotions and feelings. And so we do get close from patients. And so when the time we're going to feel, so first we need to admit that, hey, I do feel a way that my patient has died. She became more of a friend than anything else. And it's accepting that, hey, what I'm experiencing is natural. But also, what are some of the fun things that you remember about her? You said that she shares some of her stories, her encouragements, things like that. What are some things that you have learned from her that you'll carry on in your practice?
Okay.
All those things.
Okay, right. And she always told her aunt and her mom always like, because she actually was on dialysis, so she would have gone to basically go to dialysis session 2 times a week for over many years. That's a lot of visit to a healthcare facility, right?
Right.
Plus she would come here on occasion for different things as well, like to drain fluids. So I would have even developed a close one with her relatives, her mom and her aunt. But there are some stuff I think I want to counsel the relatives about at this point. Kind of share with them, because I know that they'll watch it this very soon.
So for the family especially, what we want to do is to say, well, all right, again, what are some of the fun memories you have of her? What are some powerful lessons that she taught them?
Yes.
And then even around Christmas time or other celebrations that they may have throughout the year, use it as a time to remember her as well. So what family said to me is to try not to think about relatives around those times, but actually incorporating them in that moment brings about some amount of peace as well. But it's also finding out where each individual is in the healing process and work with them individually and even collectively as well.
Oh, alright. So in terms of so what I mentioned, like adopted patient type of counseling for grief, but some different set of loss of loved ones. For example, like a person who have lost their spouse, husband or wife. What would be some of the stuff that will inform those persons about counseling?
All right, so no, that one is pretty different and very, very intense.
Yeah.
So what I'm spending time doing is exploring the nature of the relationship that they share.
Okay.
And what were some of the high points and some of the low points.
Yeah.
Want to explore even the 5 stages of grief as well. Where is the person now? What are the emotions tied to that stage? Is there anything that they would have wanted to say but didn't get to say? So give them a chance to really vent as well.
Okay. And what about say for example, a teenager or for example a person like 8-year-old, 9-year-old that have lost like a parent? That's a different situation. Like that's normally a tough one as well.
It's a tough one because we look at the age and we say, well, there are certain things I can't say, there are certain things I want to avoid, but we oftentimes underestimate how resilient children are. I think that as well. So having a conversation with them, how do you feel about the loss of a parent? Ask about the raw emotions. Younger children have a difficulty with language in terms of self-expression. So even playing games with them and you watch for themes that emerge on the play. And you can kind of talk with them through those things. So those are some good ways to help children especially.
Good. And then persons who have like parents that have lost their children, that is normally a very difficult situation because especially if it's the only child.
Right.
I know my aunt, the only child passed unfortunately violently, right? So what are some of the stuff that you would tell a parent like the only child and the child passed that no, so you probably probably reach that age which you can't have any more children. That's gonna be a tough one. So,
It's going to be tough. So usually for parents who lose children, that yes, you're right, it's a completely different setup there. So for parents, what you want to do is listen to them more than anything else. Allow them to vent. Sometimes they will say things like, "I wish I were the one that had died versus my child." Just allow them to vent. Whatever is coming through them. What you want to watch for though is severe depression leading to suicidal thoughts and actually trying to carry it out. Other than that, you allow the parent to grieve in that way. Sometimes not even saying anything, even in session, we find to be helpful for parents to just vent and release a lot of stuff going on there.
I think some family, the dynamics might, the death of a loved one might become so shocking. For example, if it was a lone breadwinner in the family. How do you normally deal with those cases in which like sole breadwinner from a family dies?
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, if a father and he was working, or a single mom with her children, they have older kids, but probably she was the only one that's working, or the father is the only one that was working. How do you normally deal with those cases? God knows there that there's going to be some emotional stuff. There's going to be a significant financial burden as well.
Right. That's in that instance, usually bring in a social worker as well to figure out what are some of the alternate ways that they can finance themselves until they get to that stage. But it's also asking those hard questions. Okay, you've lost your loved one or it's the main breadwinner. How do you plan to navigate this space? And then you kind of guide them through that process. So they're going to be somewhat irrational because things are just happening fresh.
Yeah.
So, you kind of guide the conversation, all right, what are some logical steps that we need to take in order to get you back up and running?
Okay, alright. And in some cases, some persons might die and say, for example, they didn't leave out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the family members now basically want to say have dispute over what was left to inherit. What are some of the ways in which those immediate family dispute arise during the initial death of a person? How do you normally tackle those cases? Like you have a person just there and in the midst of the grieving, person start to take like stuff that he had and no will was left, so it start to have a little dispute going on there while the death is still fresh. You don't have any case like that?
Yeah. A lot of times what I have to do is ask the family to contact a lawyer. So I'll deal with it on one side, but then they also have legal advice as well. So from my side, what I bear in mind is that the experience of the 5 stages of grief law magnified because we're dealing with an additional stress of people coming and taking the properties of the person who has died. So it's almost as if there's no value of the person right now. So it causes additional layers of grief. So it's to unpack all of those things as well and to help them through that. It's really important.
Okay. Alright. And if for example some persons would have actually died and they weren't like Christians and so forth, and like sometimes persons will wonder like if they would have gone to heaven or hell or if they're gonna see their loved one again. When they have those situations that exist, so you don't really deal with those cases.
That one's a tough one though, because especially the person who hasn't been in or have a good relationship with God, it makes it very difficult for you to then jump in and say, well, the person's soul is safe. It really don't know. So it's saying to the family, all right, so this is the situation. How do you want to live your lives? No. So what kind of relationship do you want to have with God? If that's the way the conversation goes. And so it's really assuring them that you have to look at yourself first, and knowing that this is something that you have control over. Person who's died really can't do anything more for them.
The next thing I want to mention is that sometimes, for example, someone dies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I really don't want to say condolence. I say condolence to them, but sometimes I really don't know additionally what else to say, because sometimes some persons like if you say something to them and they probably take it out of context. And like for example, sometimes I used to say to the person like, for example, the Lord knows what best. Sometimes because of how some responses I've gotten from it, I just tend to share away and just say God, my condolences, and then leave it at that. But like my wife will think that it's just too basic and still like I'm not interested.
Mhm.
But what are some of the things that we can say to persons that lost a loved one and they are our friends, but we want to like say something to them and we're probably not certain about the response. Like we want to be there for them, want to say stuff to them, but at the same time we don't want to say anything to piss them off. So sometimes I said we just probably just say minimum, which can also be interpreted as something bad. But what are some of the stuff that we should normally, that persons can normally say to a person when they lose?
Usually, like I indicated, sometimes not saying anything at all. It's actually some of the better responses. Sharing condolences is fine as well. But anything beyond that is kind of tricky.
Yes.
So one of the things that I try to promote for persons is to say, well, is there anything you want to talk about your family member being lost? Because you don't want to start out by saying something positive and the family members really didn't like that person. So you kind of want to allow the family members to initiate that level of conversation.
Okay.
Is there anything you want to talk about that you want to share in? And then that now guides you in terms of how to carry on the conversation.
Okay. And then normally, for example, like when I've gone to different like funerals, and like for example, the service at the church in terms of whether the person is a Christian or not a Christian can sometimes come off a little harsh on persons that weren't Christian. And they will just think that, oh, that person is doomed. Because I think that when someone like a Christian, at least at the funeral, I think everyone kind of feel pleased that, oh, yes, that person got to get it, so we will reunite if you make yourself pleased with that. But sometimes persons that weren't Christian, everyone is just thinking, looking and saying, oh, that person's probably going to go to hell. How do you normally kind of have those little advice for persons when they probably think their loved one probably not to that they'll make it to heaven or something like that?
One of the things I was reflecting on in that instance with patients is, remember the thief on the cross beside Jesus. I mean, he wasn't a Christian, but at the point of death, he repented and all that. So we don't know what people do at the point of death.
Okay.
So maybe they'll reconcile, even if they weren't baptized or otherwise. But no. I mean, God Himself knows how to deal with situations like those. So really and truly, we don't have a say in that, but we can just take confidence in the fact that maybe they had that last kind of God prior to death.
Okay. And another thing is that like some persons like person there and they have a little positive vibe, like they're gonna be using like say the person like as a celebration. When others just think it's such a sad moment they can't celebrate. What are some of the things you normally tell to those different groups of persons, that some persons just be happy with someone there and celebrating the person, like while some are extremely very sad and angry?
What I usually tell persons is go with how you're feeling, because your body processes grief differently.
Yeah.
And even if you'll have multiple deaths, you'll find that you yourself respond differently in different situations. So I tell persons, don't allow other people to tell you how to grieve. You grieve the way that you feel that you need to. And that's usually very, very helpful for persons, because they realize that, oh, I don't have to listen to this person, that person, how I should.
Yes.
But if they want to celebrate, then that's fine with them. If they don't want to, that's equally fine.
Alright. So in terms of, say for example, when persons would lose loved one, is it a most that they seek counseling, or some persons normally just grieve and their own without counseling and working?
I think it should be an option for persons. I find that persons usually push for medical professionals to go in and do counseling with persons. And some persons just process things differently and want to do privately.
Okay.
Other persons feel better doing it in a group. So in a situation I had some time ago with police training school,
Yeah.
we had the death of our training, and we had some persons that didn't want anything to do with talking about it, but there were poor persons who said, "You process well in a group."
Okay.
So it just depends on the individual, but I don't think it should be mandatory.
That's great. All right. And so with all the training that you get that you got in grief, do you think that in modern times, since we have gathered so much information, like every field is developing over time, do you think that we are at the standard that we have to counsel person about grief is like first class and up to date?
I think so. As far as research goes, exploring the different ways that people grieve, understanding the grieving process, and how it is very individual. It's really the research is up to date in terms of modern approaches to it. So yeah, we're there, but again, there's always room for improvement. There are other things that we can look at or explore. In that area.
Right, and then another thing is that sometimes, let's say before, different persons take news differently. Like, for example, some persons would, like, for example, can even develop medical condition after their, like, some persons even develop, like, worsening heart condition, worsening mental health condition after it. And have to seek medical attention. Some persons are admitted, some persons have to start on medication. And with some of the counseling said, I think these are those persons that actually the death of a loved one precipitated a worsen their medical condition.
All right. So my area of specialization in neuropsychology is mental health. So
Yeah.
if I've found over the years that males grieve differently from females.
Yeah.
So it's even splitting that as well in terms of gender. And then, for males, it's more about dealing with the hard core facts, what's happening, how you deal with this, what are some things you need to do. What I find for my female patients, and again, this is not for everybody, but for my female patients, what I find is just ongoing mental health. There's ongoing what's happening. Sometimes there's transference, so they'll be shouting at me, they'll be cursing me out, and I allow them to vent.
Okay.
Because that's just how they get it out of the system.
Okay. Alright. At this point, I'll probably ask most of the questions that I wanted to ask you. So I touched on myself, touched on Lataya, touched on different groups of persons that would normally grieve us. Alright, but is there any time, like some minutes now, to just summarize or to mention stuff that I didn't remember to ask you about this interview about death of loved one?
Alright, so the only thing that I want to mention is that the death of a loved one brings a different kind of pain. We lose relationships, we lose jobs, we lose different things, but losing someone cuts to the core of who we are, and it does trigger certain things for certain persons. But it's finding out the individual, how are they processing the situation and working with them.
Okay. So, Dr. Simpson, so I'm very happy that you took the time out of your busy schedule to come and have this discussion with me. As I said before, it was a topic that I had to discuss for Ms. Lataya Williams, and it was a part of the concept of the channel. The tagline for it is discussing life, sickness, and death with informative medical content. So this is actually the first episode that was dedicated to talk about death of a loved one. So I'm very happy that you use your expertise and take the time out to come and share with the audience, my audience today. Right?
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Alright. So viewers, remember to share, like, subscribe, and leave a comment on this video. Until next time, stay tuned.
Be sure to subscribe for more informative contents on life, sickness, and death.